Chapter 1531. Since everyone is here, then let royal father speak. Prince Mo turned around and pulled the young crown princess to stand beside the great king of Mo, hinting with his eyes. Royal father? The great king of Mo took a deep breath and hesitated for a moment before saying, "The vassal king of Nan has colluded with the great king's son, consort Dowager Shu, and the Shu family to plot a rebellion. All of them are to be sent to the Supreme Court as prisoners. We will decide how to deal with them after discussing this with the Empress Dowager." Yes. Waves of weeping shook heaven and earth. Regardless of whether it was the servants picking vegetables or sprinkling water in the vassal king of Nan's estate or the great king's estate, they were all sent to the prison because they were implicated. Wu Hongma cursed loudly and almost fell to the ground after being shoved by someone. She turned around, wanting to see the crown prince and crown princess clearly. However, the crowd was too turbulent, and those two were standing high above, so how could a prisoner like her see them clearly? Her heart tightened, and tears uncontrollably welled up in her heart. She didn't expect that her and the old king's lifetime of planning would be completely ruined overnight. Should she blame herself for being incompetent, or should she blame the enemy for being too strong? Wu Hongma couldn't say for sure, but she felt sorry for her son. Soon, the several hundred people were all escorted away, and the farce of forcing the emperor to abdicate officially came to an end. The Empress Dowager looked a bit tired after being disturbed for so long, so Aber supported her back to the Longevity Palace to rest. When the Crown Prince saw that his little wife had abandoned him to show filial piety to her grandmother, he immediately followed without another word. However, before leaving, he glanced at the old great king and said, "Royal father, you must not be soft-hearted to prevent a comeback." The old great king was silent for a long time. This matter was already very clear. The vassal king of Nan had probably given the great king some sort of guarantee, which was why the great king took such a risk and made such a bad move out of desperation. Old consort Shu and the Shu family were clearly standing on the side of the great king's son. They colluded with the vassal king of Nan's estate and played a pivotal role in this laughable rebellion. The old great king had been in an important position for a long time. He was just a little confused, but he wasn't really stupid. After understanding this, he sighed and left with Empress Zhao. It wasn't that he didn't understand his son's intentions, but he couldn't bear to order his eldest son to be executed by his own hands. Great King, Your Majesty! Concubine Cheng was half lying on the ground. She was so scared that her whole body was trembling. Great King, please show mercy. Great King, please show mercy and spare Mo Jiao. Mo Jiao is your son, the great king, the great king. Shut up. Empress Zhao paused and turned to look at her coldly. This unfilial son colluded with outsiders to plot a rebellion. Before he did this, did he ever think that the great king was his biological father? Consort Cheng, the great king and the Empress Dowager dismissed the matter of you instigating your son to covet the ink bamboo shoots with a smile. Who would have thought that you would go from bad to worse and actually want to plot a rebellion? What? Her Majesty the Queen had already reported the matter of the ink bamboo shoots to the Empress Dowager, but the Empress Dowager didn't order us to be punished? What Empress Dowager and the great king meant was to let us off. Consort Cheng's eyes widened in astonishment. At this moment, regret welled up in her heart, and her heartache was almost indescribable. It was precisely because this matter was exposed that they hardened their hearts and ultimately agreed to the vassal king of Nan to step onto this path of rebellion with him. After all, the ink bamboo shoots were the best in the world, and only a small amount had ever been supplied to the royal family. Now that the great king's son had diverted it to raise his private army, how could the great king and the Empress Dowager let them off? Chapter 1532. She didn't expect. The great king and the Empress Dowager didn't want to bicker with her and her son. Woo. Consort Cheng covered her face and wept bitterly. She didn't expect anything. She should have thought of it long ago, right? The Empress Dowager and the great king had always been benevolent people. If they hadn't committed the great crime of rebellion, they simply wouldn't have killed her and her son. It was already useless to regret now. Her stupidity harmed herself, her son, and even everyone in the great king's estate. If she had listened to Shuchuan's advice back then and also persuaded the great king's son to set aside the struggle for fame and fortune, then wouldn't everything be different now? Consort Cheng knew but didn't report it, so she's even more guilty. Guards, lock Consort Cheng up in the Supreme Court and await her punishment. After saying this, Empress Zhao supported the great king and left first. The 12th prince was instantly dumbfounded. They had all left. Could it be that so many things had been left behind in this matter? Had been thrown to him? Why was his life so hard? He had to follow behind a group of people all day long and clean up their messes? Granddaughter-in-law, is grandmother getting old? The Empress Dowager suddenly lamented after walking for a while holding the young crown princess's hand. The young crown princess shook her head. Not old. The Empress Dowager couldn't help but turn around and smile at her. You silly child, who doesn't age? Grandmother is someone who wants to break through to the spiritual realm or even higher. She has a long lifespan, so she naturally won't age, the young crown princess said with a wink. On the side, Feng Gu couldn't help but laugh. Precisely, precisely. Your Majesty, the crown princess is extremely right. The Empress Dowager couldn't help but burst into laughter. You only know how to amuse grandmother. With grandmother's aptitude, reaching level 14 phenomenal success in this lifetime is already considered her limit. As soon as the Empress Dowager finished speaking, the young crown princess reached out and stuffed a talisman into her hands. Grandmother, there are 10 sets of mystic guiding talisman arrays in this storage talisman, which I gave to you. There are also many pills that I have labeled with their effects and usage methods. Grandmother, you can take a look at them before you consume them. After grandmother stabilizes her realm, she can take the level 14 mystic breakthrough pill. Who knows, maybe she will break through. Oh, didn't you say that the Yushio Villa is rich in profound energy? Then let's go to the Yushio Villa and go into seclusion. The Empress Dowager looked at her little granddaughter-in-law in confusion. She subconsciously dripped her blood to open the talisman under the guidance of the little crown princess. Then, she turned to the little crown princess in confusion. Granddaughter-in-law, you? The talisman arrays and elixirs here were simply an eye-opener for her. Could it be that the little granddaughter-in-law had given her all the pills that she had refined in her spare time? That's too much, child. You have to leave some for yourself. Refining pills was very time-consuming. His granddaughter-in-law had to cultivate and refine pills at the same time. Where would she find the time to refine so many pills? This was probably all she had to give him. Not much. I still have a lot for myself. Grandmother, I might have to leave for a while. The little crown princess supported the Empress Dowager's hand as they walked toward the Longevity Palace. You have to take good care of your body. When I return, if I see that grandmother has grown an extra strand of white hair, I will pluck it out for you. Feng Gu burst into laughter and repeatedly nodded as she said, Crown Princess, don't worry. This servant will definitely look after Her Majesty the Empress Dowager and won't allow her to grow an extra strand of white hair. You child. The Empress Dowager glanced at Auber with a gratified smile. Don't be fooled by this child's stoic face and icy demeanor toward others all day long. Her heart was very soft. Chapter 1533. Bang Bang Bang. Inside a remote woodshed in the vassal king of an Nan's estate, after someone knocked away a protruding stone slab, a figure covered in grime abruptly rolled out from within. Cough, cough, cough. Commandery Princess and flicked the dust in front of her with all her might as she coughed uncomfortably several times. She then turned to look at the sobbing Su-er. Su-er. Cough, cough, cough. Commandery Princess. Su-er hastily stepped forward to support En. She exclaimed, Commandery Princess, are you all right? Are you hurt? Are you hurt? I'm not hurt. Commandery Princess and angrily flicked away Suer's hands as she declared angrily, simply outrageous. This D*Ned Cho Fu actually dared to imprison this Commandery Princess in that kind of woodshed for a day and a night. I'm not done with him. In the middle of the night, That woodshed suddenly collapsed for some reason, burying Anne for most of the night. It was only now that she finally crawled out from the pile of wood with great difficulty. This was simply an extraordinary humiliation. A dignified commandery princess was actually buried in the woodshed for a night. Abominable, abominable, abominable. Cho Fu, this D*MN man, not only did he have a bad character, but he also didn't even have the basic respect for his wife anymore. Just thinking about it made her furious. Ian angrily waved away the dust that drifted in front of her as she led Su toward the forecourt. Commandery princess, we had better pack up and escape quickly. Escape for what? Could it be that I, the dignified commandery princess Ian, would be afraid of the vassal prince of Nan? Ian rebuked angrily. No, commandery princess, right now, the vassal king of Nan's estate. And didn't have time to listen to Su'er's words as she arrived at the forecourt in a huff. Only then did she discover that the estate was empty. What's going on? Commandery Princess Ian looked at Su'er in confusion. Where did everyone in this household go? A lot of people came last night and took away everyone in the vassal king of Nan's estate. Su'er explained while wiping her tears. This servant also doesn't know what happened. This servant didn't even dare to run to the front to take a look. I only heard a huge commotion while hiding in the corner. Ethan had been locked up in a remote woodshed by Cho Fu, so she was unaware that she had avoided a calamity. As for Su'er, it really was all thanks to Commandery Princess Ian. After she discovered that something was amiss while hiding at the base of the wall, she quickly ran over to the woodshed to hide. Fortunately, the woodshed was very remote. The soldiers who passed by only took a few glances and left immediately after discovering that it was a woodshed. Last night, the soldiers had focused their search on their master's backyard. They had practically dug up every brick and tile, and no one knew what they were looking for. Anne was suspicious as she glanced at Su'er and suggested, "How about you secretly go out and ask around? I will wait for you here." Su'er could only nod her head. As Ian sat in the quiet courtyard by herself, small goosebumps actually appeared on her small arms. She kept feeling the gloomy wind around her. Even sitting in the main hall made her feel uncomfortable. Furthermore, she lowered her head and looked at the small wound next to her navel. It had already been 3 days, but the wound still hadn't stopped bleeding. This made Ian feel like she had seen a ghost, and she started to feel anxious. After a few minutes, Su'er ran back in a fluster and said, "Commandery Princess, let's quickly pack up some valuables. We really have to escape." What exactly happened? When Ian saw her ghastly pale complexion, looking like she was about to faint, a bad premonition surfaced in her heart. Chapter 1534. After she came out, even her reliable personal maid, Ming Qian, had disappeared. It could be seen that something big must have happened at home. Commandery Princess, royal notices have been posted all over the streets. Last night, the vassal prince of Nan and vassal prince Cho Fu colluded with the Shu family and the great king's son in an attempt to rebel and force the abdication. They have been captured by His Highness the Crown Prince and His 12th Highness, and have all been imprisoned in the Supreme Judiciary. They are not to be visited without a royal edict. Commandery Princess Ian's eyes bulged. What? Then, what about me? The maid Su'er burst into tears. "Miss, you and I have both been put on the wanted list. Our arrest notices are all over the streets, saying that we, master and servant, have absconded in fear of punishment, adding to our crimes. If we resist during the arrest process, we will be killed without mercy." Smack! Commandery Princess Ian's legs gave out, and she fell heavily onto the stool. She shook her head repeatedly and said, No, Her Majesty the Queen Dowager wouldn't be so heartless. She definitely doesn't know about this matter. I want to enter the palace. I want to see the Queen Dowager. I want to see the Queen Dowager and tell her that I was completely unaware of this matter at the vassal king of Nan's estate. Commandery Princess, don't be silly. How could Her Majesty the Queen Dowager not know about these wanted posters being posted all over the streets? If she wanted to help you, she would have already had the wanted posters removed, right? Ah! Commandery Princess E and slapped the table beside her forcefully. I am only a newlywed who has just married into the vassal king of an Nan's estate for a few days. Why should I shoulder this blame? Why? Su said while wiping her tears. Miss, now is not the time to talk about this. Let's quickly return to our room and see if there's anything we can pack up. We will leave quickly after packing up. We can't stay in the Mo Kingdom capital any longer. We have to escape far away. No, I won't escape. Commandery Princess E and declared furiously. I want to enter the palace. I want to see the Queen Dowager. I have to explain this matter to her clearly. I have been by the Queen Dowager's side for so many years. The Queen Dowager knows my character the best. Why should I be buried with those idiots from the vassal king of an Nan's estate like a stray? I want to divorce the vassal prince of an Nan. I have nothing to do with him at all. Su was both anxious and irritated. Your Highness. What else could he say? Don't forget, you are the legitimate vassal prince consort of an Nan. Now, even the crown prince's 18 concubines have been thrown into prison by the great king, let alone you, the principal wife of the vassal prince of an Nan. Besides, how are we going to find someone to refute this? The vassal king of an Nan had indeed rebelled with his son. Now, the old vassal king and the old vassal consort's family of 3 were all in prison. As soon as you show your face, not to mention refuting, you will be arrested and executed on the spot. Ian collapsed onto the stool and cried in fury. What did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? God, how dare you treat me like this? From beginning to end, I never wanted to be the vassal prince consort of an Nan. Why is my life so bitter? Ian was still weeping endlessly, but Su suddenly grabbed her arm and pulled her up from the stool. Let's go, Your Highness. What are you crying for now? If you continue crying, there really won't be any more time. At this juncture of life and death, Ian was actually not as decisive as a little girl. The master and servant duo quickly ran back to their room, and they nearly fainted when they saw what happened. They were so infuriated that one Buddha ascended to the heavens and 2 Buddhas left their bodies. Chapter 1535. As it turned out, all of the rooms in the vassal king of an Nan's estate had been swiftly ransacked, and the valuables had long been moved back to the royal storehouse. Right now, not even a single piece of clothing had been left behind for them. No wonder she kept hearing people going in and out in the middle of the night, rummaging through every master's court. So it turned out that they were searching for supplies buried underground. Looking at the room that had been ransacked, Ian couldn't resist covering her face and sobbing. This was truly intolerable. How could she continue living like this? What was she supposed to do when a delicate woman who had gotten used to living a life of luxury had to wander the pugilistic world like duckweed? She couldn't bear to live on when she thought of those terrifying days. On the side, Su's eyes flickered, and she hastily pulled Ian towards the rear door of the vassal king's estate. Commandery Princess, we can't stay here any longer. This place is not safe, and those people might come to search again. At that time, we really will have nowhere to run. Commandery Princess Ian wiped her tears as she caught up to Su. She lamented, Su, we are penniless. What are we going to do in the future? It's fine, Commandery Princess. After we pawned our jewelry and clothes, we reckon that we can still last 3 to 4 months. At that time, this servant will find a job, and it will definitely not be a problem for us to survive, Su said with a loyal and devoted expression. Ian was gratified. She didn't expect that Su would still be willing to follow her in such dire straits. Su took out a cloth bundle from her waist and said to Ian, Commandery Princess, let's put in the precious jewelry and bright clothes. That's right, miss. Do you have any valuable magnetite on you? Let's exchange them for mystic currency as well. It will be easier to buy and sell things in the future. After we leave the vassal king of a Nan's estate, please wait for this servant, Commandery Princess. This servant will go to the pawn shop to exchange for mystic currency before we continue. Commandery Princess and nodded. This was the only way now. She then took the bag of magnetite hanging from her waist and handed it to Su. She then took off the hairpins and other valuable items on her head. Now that a calamity was imminent, she could only wait for the future and plan for the long term. However, the wound next to his navel was like a hidden danger. Why didn't it heal after so many days? Commandery Princess and took a deep breath before sneaking out of the vassal king of an Nan's estate's back door with Su. Fortunately, after such a major incident, no commoners dared to pass by the vicinity of the vassal king of an Nan's estate. After all, everyone was in danger. Ordinary people were also worried. If they passed by the prince's mansion, they might be arrested as accomplices. The two of them took off their gorgeous clothes and purposely smeared some mud and dust on their white undergarments. They walked miserably toward the pawnshop stealthily. "Miss, wait for me here. I'll come out immediately after I pawn the items," Su secretly instructed. Seeing that the road was filled with patrolling soldiers, Su was worried and pulled her young miss into a small alley. She reached out to grab a tattered bamboo basket from the corner of the wall and wrapped it around Commandery Princess Ian's head. Su had the Commandery Princess squat in the corner before instructing earnestly, "Miss, you mustn't come out. I'll come back to find you immediately after exchanging mystic currency. Don't worry, these jewelry and those magnetite that you gave me can probably be exchanged for 20,000 mystic currency. It's enough for Miss to spend for a while." Chapter 1536. Su, hurry up. Come back quickly, don't make me wait too long. Machem. Su nodded vigorously before sprinting toward the pawnshop's entrance. Anne couldn't help but sigh in relief when she saw her nimble movements, carefully evading a row of patrolling soldiers, and successfully entering the pawnshop. Although the days were tough, they had to go on, right? Fortunately, Su treated her loyally. As long as she survived, she would have a chance to complain to Her Majesty the Queen Dowager in the future. Presumably, that elderly lady would forgive her on account of their past relationship. After all, she wasn't the one who wanted to rebel. She was just a newlywed who had just entered the vassal king of an Nan's estate, yet she was implicated by the old prince and his son for no reason. She truly was too innocent. She pondered as she waited for Su to come out of the pawnshop. However, as time passed, Commandery Princess Ian's legs were numb from squatting, but Su still hadn't returned. After less than an hour, the Commandery Princess, who was wearing a tattered bamboo basket on her head, finally sensed that something was amiss. She hastily lifted the tattered bamboo basket on her head and hid in a corner. She stealthily waited for the patrolling soldiers to pass by. Then, she found an opening and hastily ran to that pawnshop across the street. However, when she entered, she saw that Su was nowhere to be seen. Ian hastily walked up and asked anxiously, "Shopkeeper, did a delicate and pretty young lady come to pawn a bag of magnetite and gold and jade jewelry just now?" "Oh, you're talking about that young lady. She pawned 20,000 mystic currency and left long ago." "What?" As if struck by lightning, Ian's body swayed before collapsing limply on the ground. Su that D*MN lass, actually ran off with the money. Ah, the heavens were actually treating her like this. On the second floor of a tea house in the Mo Kingdom capital. She came out. Young master, that dumb woman came out of the pawnshop. Ha, she actually only discovered a clue after such a long time. She really is dumb. Cult Master Ding, who was dressed in a gorgeous long robe, lazily leaned against the window. He glanced indifferently at Commandery Princess N, who was walking on the main street in a daze, and his lips curled up into a mocking smile. This servant thought that young master really didn't want Princess to return the 20,000 profound coins. "So you were waiting for it here." Bao Yen giggled and clapped her hands with a carefree expression. Previously, when young master had disguised himself as XN to get close to that Commandery Princess En, she had almost been disgusted to death. That En was two-faced. She clearly wasn't of much help to the young master, yet she dared to demand an exorbitant price, asking the young master to forgive her 20,000 yuan debt. She was simply crazy, penniless, falling from the clouds to the bottom of the mud. Quite pitiful, Cult Master Ding murmured. His fingers pinched the white jade cup, and he raised his head to drink the wine. Let's go. He stood up and brushed his sleeves. His lips curled into a cold smile. Baoyan was right. Since it wasn't of any help to him, why should he benefit from it? Baoyan simply did not know that her young master had transferred all of his anger from Prince Mo onto Commandery Princess N. That's right, that's what Cult Master Ding was thinking. This An didn't help him to the end. She had said that she would let him enter the palace, but before he could properly speak with Darling Qiao, that D*MN Crown Prince had rushed over. It was all this An's fault for not arranging everything properly. If it was her fault, then it was her fault. That's why she deserved this outcome. As for that loyal and devoted maid, Su, Cult Master Ding's gaze was meaningful. He wished her good luck. Chapter 1537. Young Master, don't disguise yourself as a lowly servant girl next time. It will only bury your identity. Baoyan nagged as she followed him down the stairs. She was very disapproving of young master's disguise in order to get close to Commandery Princess N. It was fine if he had pretended to be Miss Xianyu, since Miss Xianyu's identity was still rather noble. But this time, in order to get close to En, young master actually pretended to be Su, that lowly servant girl. This really disgusted Baoyan to death. That D*MN servant girl, what right did she have to dare to make young master pretend to be her? Her death was not in vain. Baoyan's eyes flickered. 2 hours ago, Su, that servant girl, had hastily gone out to gather information under the Commandery Princess's urging. Just as she was about to squeeze into a small alley, Cult Master Ding, who had followed her, knocked her unconscious. Cult Master Ding squatted down with a grin and personally undid Su's outer garment. After a series of crackling bones shuttling back and forth, Ding Yun's body suddenly became as tall as Su, and his appearance also became identical to Su's. He unhurriedly put on Su's outer robe, buttoned it up, and tied his hair into the same bun as Su's. Only then did Cult Master Ding turn around with a smile and say to Baoyan, who had a fuming expression, "All right, go to the tea house and wait for me. I'll come over when I'm done." "Young master, why go through so much trouble? We can just knock that Commandery Princess Ian unconscious and rob her of all her valuables." Baoyan scoffed. "In any case, that woman only has a very low cultivation. If we want to rob her, she can only obey obediently. What do you know? What's the point of doing this?" Cult Master Ding's gaze turned cold as he gave Baoyan a warning look. "If you continue to point fingers, don't follow me anymore." Baoyan quickly said, "Young master, I know my mistake." It was Baoyan's slip of the tongue. "Humph." Cult Master Ding creased his brows before suddenly chuckling. "This is what's called fun. Look, An originally thought that she wouldn't sink in the short term by grabbing onto the last Su, who would have expected that her personal maidservant would pack up her bag and run away. Just think of how spectacular An's expression would be at that time. In the future, I will have nothing. He really didn't know what kind of wicked taste this Cult Master Ding had. All right, let's not talk about this anymore. Go to the tea house. I'll go meet Ian first. Young master, what should we do with this girl? Let her be. When she wakes up, she can leave on her own. He's also a poor child." After the young master left, the girl Baoyan lowered her head and glanced at Su, who was lying on the ground. A trace of disgust and anger appeared at the corner of her mouth. She hurriedly ran onto the street and blocked a patrolling guard. "Big brother, I saw a wanted criminal over there." Night fell. Prince Mo finished giving instructions to the 12th prince in the study. He looked at him and said, do you remember what Big Brother said?" With a pitiful expression, Mo Yu glanced at the Crown Prince and said, "Big Brother, you really have to leave?" The Crown Prince nodded. This matter could not be delayed any longer. He had originally wanted to hold out until he personally saw his little fellow climb the heavenly stairway, but from the looks of it now, it was clearly too late. These are the edicts of the Hidden Night Pavilion and the Dragon Saliva Guard. Keep them well. Mo Lien tossed 2 jade pendants into Mou's hand. Chapter 1538. Big Brother, please reconsider. You're really not afraid that I'll squander away all the good things you've left in my hands? Mou gazed pitifully at his older brother with a mournful expression that said, "Please don't go." Prince Mo couldn't help but laugh and flicked his head. "Don't talk nonsense. Do you think I don't know how capable you are? Yu Xiu will lead 7 members of the Hidden Night Pavilion to escort Jojo to the middle 6 prefectures. The remaining people will be under your command from now on. Properly preserve the token and make good use of it. These resources in your hands will be your future reliance. Big Brother, how about you bring me along with you?" Mou continued to plead. "When your cultivation reaches the 13th level and you comprehend the power of the 5 spirits, Big Brother will bring you along." "Really?" Mou's eyes brightened. "Big Brother, then it's a deal." Mo Lien couldn't help but chuckle inwardly. After exhorting a few more words, she then said to him seriously, Did you have any comprehension from leading the army this time?" Mou nodded and said, "The vassal prince of Anan is an expert at commanding troops. If it weren't for Yu Xiu and Hui Fan helping me afterward, the vassal prince might have escaped. Don't worry, Big Brother. You will definitely properly learn from General Shi during this trip to the barracks." Mo Lien nodded with gratification in her eyes. "You will follow General Shi to the border to guard the border this time. Second Young Master Shi will also accompany you. Although Second Young Master is sickly and frail, he has his own unique points in commanding troops and arranging formations. You must not be ashamed to ask for guidance, understand? Amen, Big Brother, you will." Holding his younger brother's hand, Crown Prince Mo sat down beside the table with him. After eldest brother leaves, you have to visit Royal Mother frequently. You mustn't be like before, running away everywhere like a wild monkey and worrying Royal Mother deeply. Got it, Big Brother. Mou's eyes reddened, and he suddenly hugged Prince Mo. "Big Brother, you must remember to come back." Truly a silly child. Big Brother is only leaving home for a period of time. I'll come back no matter what in 3 to 5 years. What are you crying for? A man bleeds, not tears. Her Majesty the Queen has arrived. Mou hurriedly got up and wiped the corners of her eyes. Imperial Mother must have a lot to say to you. I'll leave first. He was worried that if he continued to stay here, he would be like his mother, hugging his big brother and crying. If that happened, where would he put his little face? Mo Lien stood up to welcome her and led Queen Zhao to the small table to sit down. Empress Zhao dismissed the servants. As soon as she saw her son, her tears fell uncontrollably. Mo Lien hurriedly stepped forward and obediently knelt in front of his mother. He softly comforted her. "Imperial Mother, your son will only be away from home for a period of time. It's not like I won't be coming back. Don't be sad, okay?" Empress Zhao wailed. "My child, Imperial Mother knew that this day would come. When your father told me this morning, I couldn't believe my ears. It turns out that the elders of the Divine Land had found you long ago. Why didn't you tell me anything? It's just a small matter. There's no need to bother me. Imperial Mother, I promise you that I'll come back in at most 5 years, at least 3 years, okay?" Empress Zhao choked with sobs. "My child, do you know that although you're not my biological child, I watched you grow up little by little. From Tuanzi's age, you grew up to be such an excellent young man. I've engraved my child in my bones and blood. Mother and son are connected by heart. If you leave now, you're gouging out my heart." Chapter 1539. The Crown Prince walked up to Empress Zhao on his knees and held her hand as he said softly, "Mom, I promise you that no matter how many difficulties and obstacles await me in the future, I will always remember you. I will always remember that father and mother are waiting for me at home. I will definitely come back with my wife." Empress Zhao hugged her son and bawled loudly. Mom was muddle-headed. Mom didn't like your wife at the start. I always felt that she was cold and heartless and didn't even smile at her elders. How could Mom be so muddle-headed as to fancy a woman like and who has a Buddha's mouth but a snake's heart? It wasn't until that day at Yiting Court that Mom realized that your wife, that girl, is actually a good child even though she is cold on the outside and not good with words. What was the use of Anne's glib tongue to amuse her? When danger came, it was still that little stoic daughter-in-law of hers who saved her. The little stoic was just a person of few words. Rather than bickering, the little stoic used practical actions to express herself. This was the difference. One was gaudy and unrealistic, while the other was practical and kind-hearted. Empress Zhao was only regretting that she didn't build a good relationship with her youngest daughter-in-law from the start. Now that her daughter-in-law was about to leave, she didn't have a chance to get along well with her. She couldn't help but feel sad when she thought of this. Jojo, this child, is also leaving in a few days. Mom doesn't feel good about not being able to get along with her. Mom, don't be sad. No matter where we go, you are Jojo's and my greatest concern. Besides, Jojo won't be leaving for a few days. Mom will bring Jojo around these few days. Mom, I'm telling you, it's the easiest if you don't want to see Jojo's stoic face. You just have to tell her, daughter-in-law, since you're about to leave, just smile for Mom. She'll definitely smile. Empress Zhao glanced at her son and pointed at his forehead with a smile through her tears. You're always teasing your mom. While the mother and son were chatting, Xiao Mu also made 3 consecutive promises in front of her parents. She promised to return home within 3 years, she promised to send a message back within half a year, and she also promised that she absolutely wouldn't get hurt. Wei Ziqin asked Xiao Zhongbang to open the ancestral hall, and the couple brought Aber to Long Chuyun. Child, you have to keep the jade pendant that mother gave you. That's the symbol of the Mu family's status. Xiao Mu pursed her lips non-committally, but she did not refute. She would never take the initiative to get in touch with the Mu family of the Divine Prefecture. These so-called relatives, hee. Hey, mother doesn't care what you think in your heart. In short, promise mother that you must not be angry with your biological mother, okay? Mother, I'm not angry at her. Then why didn't you take the initiative to visit her these days? Wei Ziqin glanced at her daughter's stubborn side profile and suddenly reached out to pull her into her arms. Mother knows that you're upset, but mother wants you to face it, okay? Aber nodded. Mother, what happened to Long Chuyun? Why was I implicated by her? I'll face all these and find out the truth. Mother, don't worry, those people from the Mu family can't hurt me anymore. Because before they hurt her, she would let them die. Wei Ziqin's heart trembled, and she and her husband Xiao Zhongbang looked at each other. The couple was baffled, and a bad premonition emerged in their hearts. Why did their daughter have such a murderous look when she talked about the Mu family? Was this okay? Chapter 1540. 976 Aber didn't know if she was good or not, but she didn't have a good impression of the Mu family. How she would treat them in the future would depend on how they treated her. Moreover, she was bound to meet Shuntian Prefecture's prefecture lord, Gung Pengcheng, on this trip to the middle 6 prefectures. At that time, it would be clear who was the god and who was the ghost. At the end of the quiet hill, Aber stood there with Haitang. Aber didn't move, and her gaze fell on Haitang, who was digging the soil. After digging deeply, Haitang quickly dug out the coffin of the great king's consort. She turned to Aber and said, "This isn't good, Crown Princess." Of course, digging a grave wasn't good, but it depended on whose grave she was digging. Open it. Aber glanced indifferently at Haitang. This child was a blockhead. She didn't talk much, and every time she spoke, she would be in a daze. No matter how much she disapproved of her master, she would obediently complete the task. Haitang cupped her hands 3 times at the coffin before opening it. She was very fast. With a light pat on the coffin lid, the nails on the coffin lid flew up and bounced to the side. The coffin lid opened, revealing 1 adult and 3 children. 4 pale faces were revealed. If normal people saw this, they would probably be greatly shocked and scared half to death. However, Xiao Mu's expression did not change in the slightest, without the slightest ripple. Hai Tang picked up a sword and was about to stab it into the coffin. Aba couldn't help but twitch her mouth. "Stop, what are you doing?" Hai Tang turned to look at her blankly, her little face full of confusion. "Crown Princess, didn't you dig up the grave of the great king's consort to kill the corpses and whip them out?" "Aba, I have no grudges with them, why would I do that?" Xiao Mu gazed at Hai Tang exasperatedly. "Moreover, even if you have enmity and grudges, you can just take revenge when you're still alive. Why do you have to compete with a corpse? Boring." The little crown princess naturally had her pride. As she spoke, she seemed to have thought of something, and her eyes flashed slightly. She wondered if Ian was doing well. The little crown princess's lips curled into a sneer. He dared to show off his culinary skills in front of her to please the queen, and even dared to insult her to her face. Naturally, he had to pay the price. He wondered if she had been feeling unwell recently after eating the pastries with added ingredients. The funniest thing was that the sumaru seed that Ian had placed inside the jasper begonia to trick the queen dowager had been turned into medicinal powder and given to Commandery Princess Ian to eat. This kind of poisonous powder had a very strange use. Once a person's body was injured, the wound would never heal. If it wasn't detoxified within half a month, the wound would fester and spread until there was no blood left. Poison? Poison is right. Didn't they know that she would get angry if they kept coveting her men? Hai Tang blinked. "Then Crown Princess, why exactly are you digging up graves?" The little Crown Princess walked up and squatted down in front of the great king's consort. She pried open her lips and poured down 2 mouthfuls of the medicinal liquid. She then poked her throat with 2 fingers, and that medicinal liquid slowly trickled down. Hai Tang looked at her little Crown Princess in shock. She wouldn't be so bored as to ask the Crown Princess if she wanted to poison the great king's consort again. The Crown Princess wouldn't be so bored. The little Crown Princess definitely had her reasons for doing this. However, she didn't know what the Crown Princess meant by this. Ah! Cough, cough, cough. Chapter 1541. 977. Looking at the great king's princess consort who suddenly choked and coughed while struggling to sit up, Hai Tang was even more fearful. Even though Hai Tang was skilled and daring, she couldn't help but be shocked by the scene before her. Not good, the great king's princess consort has turned into a corpse. Hai Tang held her sword and blocked in front of the crown princess. "Didn't I say it couldn't be buried? Look at how fierce it is. The moment the coffin is opened, the corpse will rise." In today's world, everyone was used to cremating corpses to prevent the corpse from mutating and coming out to harm people again. Crown Princess. The great king's princess consort coughed and called out softly. Heavens, the great king's princess consort could actually still speak? What was going on? Could it be that the great king's princess consort wasn't dead at all? Hai Tang looked at the little crown princess in shock, only to see her pouring that bottle of medicinal liquid into the mouth of the 3 children. Very quickly, the 3 children also woke up one after another and timidly nestled beside Shu Quan, their faces filled with fear. "Don't be afraid." Shu Quan hugged the 3 children and comforted them as she hurriedly got up to bow to Aba. "No need to be so courteous." Aba waved her hand and excused Shu Quan from bowing. Hai Tang muttered at the side, "Crown Princess, so the bottle of medicine you gave to the great king's princess consort that day was a fake bottle of poison, ah?" "What fake?" "It's genuine. It's throat-sealing poison. Could a fake one deceive so many imperial physicians?" The poison was naturally real, but she also had a way to bring someone back to life within 2 days. Xiao Mu swept this dull-witted fellow a glance. She was also present that day and saw her hand a bottle of poison to Shu Quan with her own eyes. At that time, this lass even asked her with a straight face why she helped Shu Quan. The little crown princess thought that this silly lass had completely understood her intentions, but she didn't expect that. Heh. Was it really a good idea to keep such a strange child by his side? This servant thought that you didn't want the eldest prince consort and her child to suffer the pain of being imprisoned. That was why you agreed to help at the beginning and gave them a bottle of poison so that they could die quickly. After that, when she learned that the great king's son was also involved in the conspiracy, the crown princess became angrier and angrier. She immediately wanted to dig up a grave and whip the corpse to vent her anger on the great king's son. Haitang scratched her head. Arbor was speechless. This guy's way of thinking seemed to be different from others. Is it really a good thing for you to imagine your own master like this? That was why she was holding the sword and preparing to chop the corpse with a serious face. She really thought that her master wanted to go back on her words and whip the corpse. I didn't think that the crown princess would really save them. Haitang said blankly. Actually, when the great king's son's consort came to find her master that day, she didn't understand the situation at all. The two masters spoke without rhyme or reason, so she stood at the side and only watched and listened without saying anything. When she saw the crown princess give the great king's son's consort a bottle of medicine, and the great king's son's consort thanked her with tears in her eyes, she imagined the plot. What was wrong with that? All right, turn around. Master didn't want to talk to a fellow like you who imagined too much. Haitang obediently turned around and faced Arbor with the back of her head. Master, when you leave, call this subordinate. Arbor, did the crown prince throw such a silly person to her side just to be funny? The great king's son's consort pulled the three children up and lowered her head slightly with tears in her eyes. Thank you, crown princess, for your help. Chapter 1542. Shu Quan has nothing else to ask for in this life. Today, I will lead the three children far away from the Mo Kingdom capital and go to the mountains and countryside to spend the rest of my life there. The great king's consort held the three children and bowed toward Arbor again. Shu Quan definitely won't cause trouble for the crown princess. Please be at ease. Arbor nodded and handed her a bag of mystic currency. Take the things in the coffin with you. Take good care of the children in the future and don't return to the capital by any means. Yes. Arbor nodded slightly and didn't say anything else. He turned around and called for Haitang to leave together. Shu Quan tightly embraced the three children and gratefully glanced at Xiao Mu's back a few more times. She had one son and two daughters of her first wife. The oldest daughter was no more than 10 years old, and the youngest daughter was only 7 years old. They were at the age of flower buds, so she naturally couldn't let them lose their lives innocently because of the great king's consort's stupidity. Cheng, let's go. Shu Quan tugged at her 8-year-old son's arm. The boy clenched his fists and suddenly flung her hand away. He roared at Shu Quan, Mother, where are you taking us? Why do we have to run away? Don't ask too much. Shu Quan covered her son's noisy mouth and held back her tears. Child, from now on, us four mother and son will depend on each other for survival. Our days won't necessarily be worse than before. How can our days be better than before? Although Mo Chang was young, he was very astute. Mother, everything you said before was a lie, right? Father didn't oppose at all, right? Wrong. Your father colluded with the vassal king of Nan and the Shu family to force an abdication and rebel. This is an established fact. An icy voice suddenly came from behind the tree. Royal father has already decreed that the vassal king of Nan and his vassal prince instigated a rebellion and stripped him of his title as the vassal king of Nan. As for brother great king and the entire Shu estate, all the direct descendants and collateral branches will be implicated. Although the servants and servants can be spared the death penalty, they will be exiled to the western wilderness. These are all crimes committed by the vassal king of Nan colluding with the great king's son. The cold voice was heard clearly again. Shu Quan's entire body trembled, and she turned her head to look in horror. The crown prince was wearing an ink-colored imperial robe. He wore a fan-shaped jade pendant under a sky-blue dragon-patterned belt around his waist. His jet-black hair stood on end like a waterfall. Just by standing there, he exuded an endless pressure, making it hard for others to raise their heads and look at him directly. Shu Quan was extremely flustered. She hurriedly reached out to grab the 3 children and said to them, Quickly greet your Uncle Wang." The 2 little princesses hurriedly knelt down and saluted. However, the son of the great king's first wife, Mo Cheng, had an unyielding appearance despite his young age. He raised his head and pursed his lips, stubbornly standing with his back straight and unmoving. "I don't bow to my enemies." Shu Quan was both anxious and angry. She was anxious because her son didn't know the severity of his words. She was angry because Consort Chang raised her youngest son by her side and taught him to have such an arrogant temperament. At the juncture of life and death, he still dared to be so stupid. He was simply foolish beyond compare. "Eldest sister-in-law, you're a smart person." This woman actually knew to seek help from the crown princess early in the morning. Who would normally not interact with the crown princess much know that this little fellow was actually a cold-faced but warm-hearted person who attached great importance to her promises. Normal people would most likely beat a retreat when they saw the little crown princess' cold face. Yet Shu Quan knew to take a risk out of desperation. Chapter 1543. She had staked everything on the little fellow, and as expected, she succeeded. This wife of the great king's son was overly intelligent, which made people uneasy. This kind of person who knew how to lay low and conceal herself would ultimately be a disaster if left alive. Shu Quan had been paying attention to the crown prince's every move, and when she saw his eyes suddenly turn cold and slightly raise his hand, her heart couldn't help but beat wildly. "No, your highness. Please be magnanimous and show mercy. Let my children live. They are innocent, your highness." "There are no innocents under the royal authority." Mo Lien coldly said, "Winners are kings and losers are bandits. The great king's brother lost, so he has to pay the price. Letting the tiger return to the mountain would only invite fire to burn oneself. He had never been a kind-hearted person. Especially this 8-year-old child in front of him, whose eyes were currently leaping with flames of hatred. How could he let it go? Once the seed of hatred was buried deep in one's heart, it would eventually grow into a towering tree one day. Once it was instigated and used by someone with ulterior motives, the consequences would be unthinkable. Before he left this star field, he had to pave a smooth path for his 12th brother. Anything that could become his stumbling block, he would eliminate it without hesitation. Don't say that he was ruthless, it was just that their standpoints were different. Suddenly, Shu Quan picked up a thick tree branch from the ground, and under everyone's unexpected gazes, she ruthlessly struck at her own son. She grabbed Mo Cheng and abruptly smashed his knee a few times, until that child's left knee fractured and fainted from the pain. "Your Highness, please show mercy. Shu Quan can take these children and personally write an oath binding the heavenly law. In the future, they will definitely not become a tool for someone with ulterior motives. I will also properly teach Cheng and absolutely won't let him repeat the mistakes of his past and follow in his father's footsteps, coveting things that he shouldn't covet." Shu Quan's hair was disheveled and her entire body was soaked. She heavily knocked her head on the ground, and a bulging mystic coin pouch fell from her chest with a bang. The crown prince's gaze fell on that brocade pouch embroidered with an ugly lotus flower, and his gaze softened. Ever since the little guy learned how to embroider lotus flowers, he liked to embroider lotus flowers on his sleeves, neck, pockets, and even socks. The crown prince gazed deeply at Shu Quan, then his gaze fell on Mo Cheng's left leg without any warmth. Shu Quan was very smart. It seemed that the child's leg could not be cured in the future. As a cripple, it was naturally impossible for him to reach the top and sit on the throne. He had lost the value of being used by others, so naturally, it was impossible for him to be targeted by people with ulterior motives. Shu Quan was trying to make him feel at ease. The crown prince glanced at her indifferently and nodded. "I hope you'll take care of yourself." Hui Feng led a dozen or so people behind the crown prince, and when they heard this, they couldn't help but be startled and look up at their crown prince. However, the crown prince had already turned around to leave. Huifeng and the others exchanged glances before quickly following after him. "Your Highness, are you going to let the great king's son off just like that?" Mo Lien nodded with an indifferent expression. Thinking of the bulging profound coin pouch embroidered with lotus flowers, she sighed and muttered to herself, "It's better not to disappoint her." If his stoic-faced darling wanted to save someone, then she would save him. "But Your Highness," Mo Lien abruptly turned to glance at Huifeng. "When Mo Chang comes of age, kill him without mercy if he makes any strange movements. Shu Quan, Shu Quan, you mustn't disappoint my darling. Otherwise, I'll make you wish you were dead." A harsh glint flitted through the crown prince's eyes for a fleeting moment. Chapter 1544. Pa La. After a crisp sound, a perfectly good tea set was swept to the ground, turning into broken porcelain pieces. "Your Highness." A person who looked like a shopkeeper stood in front of Mo Lu, trembling with fear and trepidation, and his voice was as soft as a mosquito's buzz. "The properties under our name have been forcefully destroyed or seized by a mysterious force one after another. Now, we don't have much income every day. If this continues, I'm afraid that we won't last half a month before we won't be able to make ends meet." "Despicable." Mo Lu slapped the table and cursed, "If I find out who's doing this behind our backs, I definitely won't let them off." "Oh, you really don't know who's targeting you?" A cold and desolate voice immediately drifted in from outside the window. Mo Lu's entire body stiffened. This voice was like a nightmare, so he naturally couldn't forget it. Mo Lu retracted the horrified expression on his face and hastily greeted with a smile. "Mo Lu didn't know that Your Highness the Crown Prince was gracing us with his presence. Please excuse me for not going out to meet you." Prince Mo stepped into the study with a smile and shot a glance at the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper immediately sensibly retreated several steps and bowed in salute. "Your Highness the Crown Prince, Second Prince, this humble one will take his leave first." The second prince only felt his back drenched in cold sweat. How could he be in the mood to pay attention to a shopkeeper's words? After nodding absent-mindedly, the shopkeeper also felt his entire body abruptly turn cold, and he hastily jogged out the door. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief, as if he had escaped from the gates of hell. "Take it for second royal brother to look over," the crown prince said coldly. Huifeng quickly stepped forward and unfolded an oath, flattening it before placing it in front of Mo Lu. When Mo Lu saw it, he couldn't help but tremble in anger. "Crown Prince, what do you mean by this? Second royal brother doesn't even understand this?" This oath clearly stated that Mo Lu must not covet Northern Mo's right to inherit the throne for the rest of his life and was willing to be an idle prince. "I'm doing this for royal brother's sake," Mo Lien said indifferently. "Rather than having unrealistic thoughts like Brother Great King, why don't this crown prince give it to you and completely sever this thought, ensuring your safety for the rest of your life?" "You?" Mo Lu's face twisted as he laughed awkwardly. "Crown Prince, you must be joking. Mo Lu has never had such disrespectful thoughts. Northern Mo naturally only has one crown prince, and that is you." Mo Lien coldly glanced at him. "I made a deal with the Rakshasa Ghost Sect's sect master. The one who wants to buy this prince's life is actually you, right?" Mo Lu immediately broke out in a cold sweat like a waterfall. He really didn't expect the crown prince to be so blunt. When this crown prince was trapped in Bailon City and was tragically attacked by tens of thousands of corpses, Brother Great King, that fool, jumped out first, causing Royal Father to mistakenly believe that he was the one who did it. Actually, Second Imperial Brother is the one who hides the deepest. Mo Lien smiled at him and said, "Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to secretly nurture Wei something Li for so long just to have her hide by my side. TSK, you're so shrewd that it makes me shudder. This crown prince has the evidence of you bribing the Rakshasa Ghost Sect to assassinate me." The crown prince's expression was indifferent as his gaze landed on that piece of paper. "See if you want to sign this oath. If you sign it, the grudges between us will be written off. And if you don't sign it?" The crown prince curled his lips. Chapter 1545. At this time tomorrow, the great king will have a complete set of evidence of second royal brother hiring someone to murder younger brother in front of him. Second Prince Mo Lu's entire body trembled, and he hastily stepped forward to pick up his brush. With a swish, he signed his name on the oath and stamped his blood seal. Very good. The crown prince nodded and took the oath to put it away. He coldly glanced at Mo Lu. After this, 12th brother will go to the military camp to gain experience for a while. I hope that you will think carefully before you make any moves. The so-called restrictions of heavenly law aren't just empty words to scare people. Even this crown prince can't do anything about heavenly law, let alone ants like you. After saying this, the crown prince led Huifeng out of second Prince Mo Lu's study without looking back. When he stepped out of the door, his footsteps paused, but he didn't turn back. He merely coldly said, "I'm letting you off for royal father's sake. You should be thankful that you have a loving father." Prince Mo coldly tossed this sentence before walking out the door. The old great king was already pitiful enough after sending away his eldest son. If he also lost his second son, his body probably wouldn't be able to bear it. He was purely thinking for royal father, otherwise. Emolienne stepped out of the second prince's study and looked up at the horizon. She sighed softly in her heart. It's time to bid farewell to Jojo. Inside the main hall of the Marquis of Jiyuan's estate, Qiao Zhongbang glared at his youngest daughter, Qiao Lin, who was dressed in men's clothing and energetically jumped out. He fumed with rage and glared at her. "What are you doing? Hurry and change out of these nondescript clothes you're wearing." "Father, I already told sister. Starting tomorrow, I'll go to the military camp with younger brother to gain experience. If I want to embark on the path of the strong, I must learn to be independent and strong. Of course, the most important thing is still to take care of Xiao Sr." Qiao Sen changed into a spirited riding outfit and made a face at Qiao Lin. "It's not certain who's going to take care of who." The little monk bit on a small handkerchief and looked pitifully at Arbor as he sniffled. Arbor hugged little Baldy and comforted him. "Hey, before the old monk left, he told me that he would come back to pick you up in 3 years. After the new year, let's count it as 1 year. Now, there are only 2 years left. The old monk will definitely come to find you." The little monk was sobbing. Arbor looked down at him and touched his little bald head. "Don't cry. I promise you that I'll be back within 3 years. The journey to the 6 prefectures continent will be difficult and dangerous. I can't bring you along. You stay at home, study hard, and cultivate diligently. I guarantee that you will see me soon." The little monk sobbed for a while and nodded his head pitifully. Wei Zichin's eyes also reddened. All the children had to leave home. Xiao Sen was still so young, and Xiao Lin was just a child. She didn't know if they could take good care of themselves. "Mother, a baby eagle must spread its wings and fly high in order to grow into a male eagle in the future. Don't worry, I'll take good care of younger brother along the way." The crown prince heard this the moment he entered the room. He looked at Qiao Lin's youthful attire and couldn't help but smile. "Mother, you really don't have to worry. Although Xiao San is going to the military camp to gain experience, I've arranged for people to take care of him along the way. And he'll be accompanying you on this trip." The crown prince glanced at Qiao Lin halfway through his sentence. "Qiao Lin, have you really decided? Broken dreams." Chapter 1546. It wasn't a joke for women to enter the military camp, and there were many inconveniences involved. Of course, Xiao Lin's abilities naturally weren't weak. At the age of 11 or 12, she was about to break through to become a level 8 mystic cultivator. These two sisters were both monstrous figures. Qiao Lin raised her small head. Brother-in-law, sister has already agreed." Darling Qiao had already agreed, so the crown prince naturally had no objections. The crown prince summoned Huifeng and had him give the oath to Mo Shurer for safekeeping. After exchanging a few words with Qiao Zhongbang, Wei Zichin, and the others, They had dinner before bidding farewell to everyone and returning to the palace. The entire journey, the little fellow sat in the carriage sullenly and didn't utter a word. When the Crown Prince saw this, he couldn't help but chuckle as he reached out to rub her head. "Didn't we agree? Jojo can't not be happy. I'll definitely go to Shuntian Prefecture to find you within 5 months. I won't go back on my word." Arba nudged to his side and tilted her head to glance at him. "You're leaving today?" The Crown Prince nodded. "Right away. Then you won't be able to watch me climb the celestial stairway. Unhappy." Normally, when this person appeared in front of her all day long, she truly didn't think much of it. But now, knowing that he was about to leave, she didn't feel good in her heart. It was as if she was empty, as if something was missing. She just wasn't happy. The Crown Prince reached out to tuck a strand of hair from her forehead behind her head. He cupped her small face and leaned close to her, gently and slowly planting a kiss on her lips. "Jojo, take good care of yourself. Let me be at ease, okay?" Arba snuggled into his embrace and reached out to hug his waist with a pair of small paws. "You also have to promise me to stay away from danger. You can't let yourself get hurt, and you can't take risks to save time." Upon hearing this, Emolien nodded and simply reached out to carry her onto his lap. Wrapping his arms around her body, he rested his head next to her neck and rubbed it. He sighed softly and said, What to do? I haven't left yet, but I already miss you so much. How about, you put me in a storage talisman and bring me along?" Darling Xiao Lin's eyes lit up as she turned to look at him. Prince Emo glanced at the little fellow's serious expression and couldn't help but chuckle. This little thing had an expression that said, "You can put me in your pocket and take me away." It was so cute. "I can't hide it from the Heavenly Tao. If the Heavenly Tao finds out that I brought a helper, do you think it will punish me even more severely?" "Liar." Arba puffed up his cheeks and glanced at him. "You just won't take me." The Crown Prince hugged her helplessly and comforted her gently. I don't want to bring you there. There are too many unknowns. I can't risk you." "I can't bear to," the Crown Prince murmured, his arms tightening. "Jojo, you have to be good." The carriage entered the Eastern Palace, and the two got off hand in hand. Taking advantage of the moonlight, they strolled slowly on the colorful stone path. The two of them held hands, their shadows entwined under the moonlight. After strolling around the Eastern Palace's little garden, Miss Chow did not feel like resting and asked him to accompany her for another 2 rounds. "Are you tired? How about I carry you on my back?" Arba thought it was a good idea. Lying on top of him, she nuzzled her head next to his neck and said in a muffled voice, "Hubby, let's not leave today, okay?" "Okay, we'll leave tomorrow morning. I'll stay with you tonight," Emolien softly responded. "If you're tired, then sleep." No. If she woke up, this person would not be by her side. Chapter 1547. Arba snuggled against his neck and exhaled. "What if you don't come to Shuntian Manor on time to find me?" "I won't." Emolien looked certain as she tilted her head slightly to look at him. "I keep my promises to you." "I said if." The little fellow persisted. "If you don't come out on time, then I'll go to the Tower of Punishment to find you." Emolien nodded, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "Okay. Then you and Rotten Peach Blossom have to work hard together. Strive to be released early and come out to see me together." Arba gave a small yawn and wrapped her arms around his slender neck. She muttered to herself, "I miss you too, Lien." He hasn't left yet, but she's already thinking about him. Emolien turned to look at the little fellow on her shoulder. She smiled warmly and raised her hand to rub the back of the little fellow's head. That night, the Crown Prince didn't sleep at all, staring blankly at the little girl in his arms. It wasn't until dawn that he absent-mindedly regained his senses and looked at the white horizon as the sun slowly rose. He stuffed something into her palm and kissed her forehead. Only then did he release her hand and leave the room. He walked alone to a door that descended from the sky. Before entering the door, He turned to look deeply at the tightly shut door and secretly said in his heart, "Jojo, wait for me." He followed the door and suddenly disappeared from heaven and earth. Abba seemed to have sensed something and suddenly opened her eyes. She subconsciously grabbed something in her hand and lowered her head. It turned out to be a palm-sized jade sculpture that was carved very vividly. A pair of beautiful phoenix eyes seemed to sparkle, blinking under the morning light. The little fellow frowned and her little face scrunched up. Holding the small sculpture in her hand, she didn't even bother to put on her outer robe and quickly rushed out the door. It was quiet outside the door and that fellow's figure was nowhere to be seen. The little fellow felt a little wronged and pursed her little mouth. She tightly held the small sculpture in her hand and stared with slightly red eyes at the empty space outside the room. It was clearly a sunny and beautiful day, but Jojo's heart was not feeling well. She returned to her room dejectedly and sat down for a while. Only then did she slowly wash up like an old cow dragging a broken cart. The Crown Prince's sudden departure shook the court greatly. Although he had made ample preparations, his departure made many old officials feel as if the sky was about to collapse. Even though the great king had repeatedly assured him that the Crown Prince was only going to the 6 prefectures to seek a higher level of cultivation, and that he would return in due time, he was certain that the Crown Prince would return. However, the courtiers were still listless and did not have the energy to work. He felt as if the soul of the entire Mo kingdom had been sucked away with the departure of the Crown Prince. Even with the Empress Dowager assisting the great king in handling state affairs, the old great king, who was used to enjoying life, had suffered a lot these days. Mo Shi and his group left with the prestige General Shi Guangfeng. Other than the second young master, Shi Guangyun, even the third young master, Shi Guangjin, was taken away. Abba didn't know that third young master Shi Guangjin, this sentimental person, had asked Celestial Medicine Valley's Wanren Ningjing for medicine when Wu family's eldest Miss Wu Xiaosu was dying. However, when Wanren Ningjing saw Wu Xiaosu's condition, she only said 4 words: "No medicine works." When third young master Shi Guang saw that his sweetheart had died a tragic death, he immediately wanted to make trouble for Qiao Mu. However, he was stopped by second young master Shi Guangyun, who had outstanding insight. Chapter 1548. When his father, Duke Qing, found out about the situation, he gave his youngest son a good beating and didn't want to care about his life or death. However, his eldest brother, Shi Guangfeng, took pity on this brainless third brother and was worried that he would be beaten to death by his father. Thus, he pleaded for him and said that he should take him to the military camp to gain experience and let him grow into a real man. From now on, he would be indomitable and would no longer be distracted by love and so on. Only then did he take the third young master away. Of course, Abba naturally didn't know about these things. However, even if she knew, she would only sneer. Fortunately, everyone in Duke Qing's estate was intelligent. If everyone was like this third young master, Shi Guangjin, then Duke Qing's estate wouldn't exist for long. These 2 days, no matter how badly the great king was overwhelmed, the little crown princess still ate and drank as usual. However, there was one thing. Her mother-in-law, Her Highness Empress Zhao, came to invite her every day and strolled here and there. It was as if she had to cultivate a good relationship with her in these 2 days. This mother-in-law of hers seemed to be happy and cheerful every day. However, when Abba took out the little jade figure carved by Mo Lien and placed it in front of her mother-in-law, Empress Zhao immediately hugged the little jade sculpture and bawled. Abba originally had a taut little face and let her cry bitterly. However, after crying for a quarter of an hour, her makeup was ruined and she looked quite pitiful. She stepped forward and hesitated for a while before reaching out and hooking her arm around Empress Zhao's shoulder. She patted her and said, "Don't worry, I will bring him back soon." If the Tower of Punishment didn't let him go, she would go find him. After finding him, she would tear down the tower. With this thought in mind, Abba's gaze became even more resolute as she nodded. "Amen, let's do it this way." "Mother misses him," Empress Zhao cried until her handkerchief was wet. She tightly held the little Mo Lien jade sculpture and didn't let go. Abba wanted to take the jade carving back, but seeing her holding it so tightly, there was a hint of sadness on her face. The little fellow's eyebrows twitched slightly, and she said proudly, "Forget it, I'll give this jade carving to you." "Really, daughter-in-law?" Empress Zhao wiped her tears and looked up at her while holding the jade carving. Arba nodded gloomily. Yeah. He didn't want to give it away. However, when he saw how much she missed her son and thought of his mother, Jojo's heart softened. Empress Zhao's tears turned into laughter. She used her sleeve to gently wipe away her tears. Thinking of the crown prince's words, she couldn't help but feel moved. Suddenly, she grabbed Xiao Qiao's hand and said softly, "Daughter-in-law, mother hasn't seen you smile for so long. You're about to leave, can't you smile at mother and let mother have some thoughts?" The little stoic's face was taut with a solemn expression. Empress Zhao saw this little lady blink as if she had worked hard for a long time before a stiff smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. Empress Zhao really burst into laughter this time. She reached out to hold the child's hand and lamented, "Daughter-in-law, mother really regrets missing such a long time and not being able to get along with you properly. Mother is muddle-headed and only looks at the surface. I've lived for so many years in the depths of the palace, but I'm still so naive. I hope you can forgive mother," Empress Zhao said softly. "Also, mother still owes you a thank you." "No need," the little fellow replied stiffly and said dryly, "We're a family, there's no need for this." Queen Zhao smiled. Chapter 1549. This time, the normal passageway to the middle 6 prefectures that opened once every 10 years opened above the Mo Kingdom capital. Thus, some cultivators who came after hearing the news, regardless of whether they came to watch the excitement or actually planned to climb the stairway to heaven, had already gathered in the Mo Kingdom capital 2 to 3 days ago. Wei Nanfeng and Bailey she didn't return. The two actually also planned to climb the stairway to heaven and head to Shuntian Prefecture. When Xiaomi heard that her older cousin Bailey she was going to abandon her and head to Shuntian Prefecture, she immediately burst into tears and hugged Bailey Shi's arm, repeatedly saying, "Don't go ah." Her crying made Bailey Shi's scalp numb, and he hastily withdrew his hand, wanting to run away and avoid her at any moment. Arba stepped forward and pulled up the bawling Xiaomi. He glared at Bailey Shi and Wei Nanfeng, asking, "What are you two thinking? I didn't hear you two mention leaving Sikong planet before." Wei Nanfeng couldn't help but smile wryly. "Actually, I already had this plan a long time ago. In this world, if you don't advance, you'll fall behind. In order to better protect the country, I feel that I need to continue improving myself. Otherwise, I don't even understand that zombies aren't natural disasters but man-made disasters. A lifetime will pass in a muddle." Bailey she was even more blunt. Emolien is already so strong that she can cast aside all worldly affairs and seek the right path for cultivation. Why can't we do the same? Xiaomi immediately burst into tears and shouted with all her might, "I'm going too, I'm going too." Wei Nanfeng rolled his eyes at her. "What are you going for? Back then, I told you to cultivate properly. How could you listen? You're a measly level 6 mystic cultivator, so you naturally can't climb the stairway to heaven." "All right." Seeing her crying like a flood, Arba couldn't help but tug at her sleeve. "We'll be back very soon." "That's right. Parting is only temporary. No matter where we go, Sikong planet's continent will forever be our home." Liang Qingqing, who was dressed in a simple cyan satin short robe and a pair of high boots, walked out in high spirits and smiled at Xiaomi, being able to have little junior sister Liang, brother Wei, and brother Bailey accompany me to climb the stairway to heaven is truly a great joy in life. Situi smiled and said, "Regardless of whether we can reach the end of the stairway to heaven tomorrow, at least we tried our best." "Me too." Doya appeared at the entrance of the flower pavilion in a red dress and smiled at Arba. "Senior sister Doya, you've come out of seclusion." It seemed that Doya's breakthrough was rather smooth, and she had now successfully advanced to become a level 13 mystic cultivator. "Very good." Situi clapped his hands and laughed heartily. "In this situation, I must drink a few cups to express the joy in my heart." Wei Nanfeng nodded and ordered someone to bring over strong liquor. Everyone shared a drink. Arbor put down his cup and said to Wei Nanfeng, Bei Moi has cleaned up the distribution of Heavenly Fate's forces on Seekong Planet these past few days, and he's dug out 20 to 30 strongholds of various sizes. How are things on your side? That's about the same. This organization should have suffered a great loss on our continent. I'm afraid they won't be able to do anything in the near future. The path to completely purging Heavenly Fate's people is long and dangerous. Situi smiled and raised his cup. But there will come a day when we will completely annihilate them and make them disappear from our home forever. That's right. At that time, our Seekong planet will definitely return to its original state. Everyone raised their cups again and downed the wine in their cups. Chapter 1550. It was noon. The entire sky above Seekong Planet was enveloped by an auspicious aura. Arbor looked up at the sky, feeling that today's weather was especially bright, beautiful, and refreshing. She quietly stood at the side of the long street, and her entire person could feel the current intense atmosphere. Large streets and small alleys were crowded with crowds of spectators. If not for the guards on both sides guarding the large crowd of ordinary people, giving them a place to stand, they probably would have been swamped by the crowd long ago. Wei Nanfeng stepped forward and said, It's already noon. I wonder when the stairway to heaven will descend. Logically speaking, the stairway to heaven has always appeared at noon in the past, Situ-Yi also muttered. But now that the time was almost over, the stairway to heaven actually hadn't appeared yet. He kept feeling that an accident might happen during the stairway to heaven operation this time. Xiao Mu glanced at the densely packed rows of people standing around her, big and small. Could it be these masses? Were they also going to climb the stairway to heaven with them? Everyone, please listen to me. Actually, the prerequisite for that stairway to heaven is that it requires the cultivation of an entry-level level 13 mystic cultivator. Moreover, it requires people who have comprehended a trace of the power of the 5 spirits to be able to climb. Liang Qingqing glanced at the crowd of spectators and couldn't help but twitch her mouth. The 5 spirits, the power of the 5 spirits, do you know? Do you understand? What I mean is that if you don't meet these 2 conditions, you generally can't even climb the first step, so there's no need to squeeze here and waste your energy. As soon as Liang Qingqing's words fell, a man with a big flat face immediately expressed his indignation. Miss, how can you say that? Although you're talented and intelligent, you can't look down on us low-level little mystic cultivators. That's right, that's right. Who said that people who haven't reached level 13 mystic cultivator realm can't go up? If we don't try, how would we know it's impossible? That's right. Maybe heavenly law will show mercy this time and let us climb up together to broaden our horizons. Liang Qingqing was actually speechless. Glancing at the large group of people around her, Liang Qingqing kindly reminded, The highest level among you is only a level 11 mystic cultivator. This is truly a bit difficult. If we can't climb the first step, we don't know what will happen. Yes. For safety's sake, you'd better disperse quickly. Don't F*King squeeze in here, causing those who really have the strength to be squeezed to the back and buried in the crowd, unable to get over. Isn't this a joke? There was a time limit for ascending the stairway to heaven. If one could not ascend within 6 hours, the stairway to heaven would close. He would wait for another 10 years before opening it again. You're just a bunch of onlookers. You have nothing better to do, yet you're crowding around here. Don't you know that others are in a hurry? Tisk. What right do you have to let us go? How do you know if you don't try? I don't care. I want to climb the stairway to heaven. Sky Ascension Stairway, Sky Ascension Stairway. The 100 or so little mystic cultivators actually cried out in protest. Among them, many had rushed over from the east and west from thousands of kilometers away in order to participate in this grand occasion of ascending the stairway to heaven and also to try their luck. There was no way they could chase them away now. Amidst the clamor, a sudden clap of thunder appeared in the clear sky. Chapter 1551. The door is here. Everyone excitedly looked up. Thousands of miles below the sky, layers of cloud-like stairs appeared one after another. They tilted down one by one, as if a cloud ladder had been laid out between the sky and the earth. The sky-ascending stairs had appeared. Everyone held their breaths and scrambled to be the first to rush up the cloud ladder. Auber leaned to the side to avoid the people who rushed past her with flushed and excited faces. A hint of displeasure flitted across her face. She didn't know what was there to be so excited about. Wasn't it just going to the 6 prefectures continent? It was as boring as ascending to heaven to become an immortal. Wei Ziqin, Qiao Zhongbang, and Second Uncle's family had also come. They originally wanted to see Jojo climb the sky-ascending stairs, but now, they were actually snatched away by the crowd of onlookers. The scene was a bit chaotic. Wei Nanfeng opened his mouth, but when he saw the crowd's surging emotions, he tactfully shut his mouth again. What could he say to these people? They wouldn't give up until they hit a wall. He would just let them experience the feeling of climbing the sky-ascending stairs themselves. Jojo, are we going to follow them and climb the stairs? Wei Nanfeng couldn't help but turn to ask Auber when he saw the swarm of little mystic cultivators rushing to the front like a swarm of bees and had already reached the first step. Auber, climb your sister. Didn't you see the crowd in front? How could there be space for people to step on the first step? Yu Xiu led Lightning Begonia, Hidden Flower, Hidden Current, and Night Charm's Midnight Xiaoqi and waited for the crowd to disperse with great difficulty before they could quickly run to the young crown princess side. Looking at the sea of people in front, they turned to ask the young crown princess, "Crown princess, how about this subordinate send people to clean up those people in front?" Clean up what? It's the same even if we go over later. They were merely a bunch of clowns. Let them hit a wall once and they would naturally return. As they spoke, 2 black figures swiftly swept past the crowd and laughed loudly. A bunch of ants dares to block this lord's path. Out of the way! The newcomer quickly sent 2 palms forward. Immediately, more than a dozen people were sent flying. They vomited blood and fell to the ground. Seeing the 2's overbearing skills, the young mystic cultivators were all terrified and hastily retreated to make way. When the 2 of them landed on the first step of the stairway to heaven, everyone could see that they were a pair of men in their early 60s. From the looks of it, he wasn't young, and his cultivation had barely reached level 13. If he couldn't ascend the celestial stairway to the 6 prefectures this time, he probably wouldn't be able to ascend it again in this lifetime. A bunch of ants! How dare you block our path? Out of the way! One of them flicked his sleeve and swept away 2 to 3 small mystic cultivators who were still pacing back and forth at the entrance to the first step. He then looked at them contemptuously, and the 2 old brothers immediately walked up the stairs. Seeing the 2 easily cross the first step, no matter how much the group of small mystic cultivators resented other people's strength, they could only inwardly sigh and express their submission. Just now, the group of them had burrowed under the first step like ants in a nest. No matter how they stretched out their legs or stretched their bodies, they were unable to ascend the first step. As expected, that young lady was right. There should be restrictions on ascending the stairway to heaven. Seeing the small mystic cultivators noisily move to the side and no longer block the path, Liang Qingqing's eyes lit up. "Little junior sister, let's go." Chapter 1552. Wait. Auber reached out and grabbed Liang Qingqing's hand. She shook her head and said, "Look again." Liang Qingqing was about to ask her what she was looking at when she heard a scream from above. 2 figures were falling down at an extremely fast speed. Boom! They crashed onto the ground, causing a cloud of dust to fly up. Liang Qingqing blinked and looked at the 2 old brothers who had rushed up the stairs in high spirits. They were now like country bumpkins, unable to get up for a long time. "Are you guys all right?" Liang Qingqing couldn't help but ask. "Don't ask, junior sister Liang." Situ-yi waved his folding fan and smiled suavely. "It looks like the 2 of them have fainted. Let's go." Auber was relieved. At most, they wouldn't be able to climb up and would be swept down. They would just faint, but their lives wouldn't be in any danger. "What's on the stairway to heaven?" Liang Qingqing asked curiously. The few of them followed Arbor and arrived in front of the first flight of stairs. Arbor looked back at her parents and family and nodded at them. Under her family's expectant gaze, she easily jumped up the first flight of the stairway to heaven. But after she reached the top of the stairs, her figure disappeared in front of everyone's eyes like a fog. Moreover, Liang Qingqing and the rest were clearly behind her just now, but now they couldn't see each other. She was the only one left on the endless ladder that stretched up into the sky. She stood at the bottom of the stairs and looked up at the clouds in the blue sky. Her heart was at ease and she actually started running up. So what if it was the stairway to heaven? It was just a stairway to heaven. Could it be that she, Arbor, couldn't conquer it? Roar! A roar suddenly came from the stairs in front of her. It was enough to shake her down. But Arbor wasn't moved at all. Her figure flashed and she quickly rushed up, completely ignoring the roar coming from the depths of the clouds. It was just the stairway to heaven. It wasn't like she had to cross a mountain of swords or plunge into a pot of boiling oil. What was there to be afraid of? Arbor pursed her lips and climbed all the way up, silently counting the number of steps in her heart. After counting, she found that it was already more than 2,700 steps. If someone were to see her now, they would definitely be dumbfounded. He couldn't figure out how this person could climb the stairway to heaven at such an inhuman speed. At this moment, there was a great distance between them. Situ Yi reached the 993rd floor. Wei Nanfeng and Bailey Shooting reached over 700, while Liang Qingqing reached over 600. Yu Xiao and the others had more or less reached the 800th level. Compared to the speed of a normal person, there was no comparison at all. However, Miss Chow did not know what was going on. She just kept running up. The closer she got to the end of the stairway, the louder the roars of the beasts became. Suddenly, a black bear jumped down from the ladder. Chow Mu leaped up and smashed her fist into that black bear's left eye socket. With a kick, the black bear rolled down the ladder miserably. Situ Yi, who was standing on the 1001st step, took a deep breath and turned his head to look. He didn't know what ghost had rolled down from his side. He felt a little strange in his heart, but he continued to climb up. Bang! It's coming, it's coming. Someone fell down. Someone shouted gloatingly. When the crowd below the ladder saw clearly, the one who suddenly jumped out and roared at everyone was not the person who went up just now, but a black bear. What the hell? Everyone was so scared that they pissed their pants and hurriedly scattered. Chapter 1553. But strangely enough, the black bear that fell from the cloud ladder did not attack anyone else. Its pair of small eyes were horrified as if it had seen a monster. It glanced at everyone and then hurriedly turned around, scurrying up the cloud ladder on all fours. In a flash, it disappeared without a trace. Everyone stared speechlessly at the black bear's running figure. They looked at each other. You suddenly fell from the cloud ladder and scared people half to death, and you still have reason? 8th Princess Mo Yu chuckled. This must be a black bear. Arbor naturally did not know about the following episode. She only cared about climbing all the way up. At this moment, she had already arrived at a large door carved from white marble. This large door stood indomitable in front of her. It was tightly shut, and it was useless to push. There were 5 palm-shaped grooves on the door. They respectively represented the 5 spirits of water, fire, earth, wood, and thunder. So that was the case. If someone did not comprehend a trace of the 5 spirits, even if they painstakingly climbed up the cloud ladder, they would not be able to enter this door at all. Therefore, there was simply no need to wait for Situ Yi and the rest. Because the heavenly Tao would not allow everyone to enter together. It was testing one's cultivation and the 5 spirits respectively. Naturally, it had to separate everyone and consider them individually. She could only wish Situ Yi and the rest good luck. Without any psychological burden, Miss Chow first reached out and pressed on the grooves that represented the 5 spirits. It did not require much effort, nor did it require you to inject spiritual energy. This groove was only to sense if there was a spirit meridian in your body. If there was, then it would be fine. The door quickly opened in front of Arbor. Just as Miss Chow was about to step in, she saw many crooked words engraved on both sides of the door. This door was really too tall, and those words were engraved very high. Therefore, Arbor did not notice at all at first. Now, she realized that there were many names engraved on it. The format was uniformly written. Who was here? Arbor tilted her head and thought that since everyone had left their names, then she should leave one too. Thus, she suddenly flew up, took out a gold-beaded talisman pen, and engraved a few delicate and pretty words. Miss Chow was here. Then, with a flash, she entered the door. An hour later, Situ E was the first to arrive at the white marble door. Following that, he discovered Miss Chow's message. Senior brother Situ thought to himself, this must be a message that junior sister left for everyone. She's telling them that she's already gone in first and that they should hurry up and follow. Yes, that must be the case. In that case, he had to leave a secret signal for his brothers behind. Thus, Situ E wrote a few words beside Darling Chow's handwriting. Senior Marshal Brother Situ was here. Then, he entered the door with a satisfied expression. After that, everyone followed suit and left their names. As a result, after 100 years, the new talents had no place to leave their notes. They pointed at the white marble door, commenting on the ugly handwriting and funny comments. What senior brother Situ? Whose senior brother are you? That's a story for another day. After Miss Chow entered the door, she walked through a white corridor. At first, she couldn't tell which direction she was going in. With a flick of his finger, over a dozen rail-guiding butterflies flew out from Paradise Planet. They flapped their wings and flew forward. It wouldn't be too late to let the rail-guiding butterflies wander around and find a way out before following, lest she wandered around like a headless fly. After a while, a few butterflies flew back and flapped their wings to lead the way. Chapter 1554. Arbor immediately followed, following several guiding butterflies into the depths of the white fog. At the same time, in an abandoned old residence on the outskirts of the Mo Kingdom capital, an extremely tight secret experiment was being conducted. A woman's pained and hoarse cries continuously sounded from the small, claustrophobic room. A person's back was facing the night sky as he toyed with an old metal ghost mask between his slender fingers. A languid curve faintly slid across the corners of his mouth. The high priest died an unnatural death. Siming Manor was exposed in front of people. So many years of hard work went down the drain. It's truly disappointing. Two black-clothed subordinates stood behind him. They lowered their heads submissively and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Eager for quick success and instant benefits. The high priest was too anxious, so his identity was exposed. From the very beginning, when the mystic beast forest used the news of the phoenix egg to lure people over, people began to suspect him. He's just as stupid as his master. That guy was anxious to destroy the water source, but he didn't make sufficient preparations, so he still failed in the end. The two black-clothed subordinates continued to act as wooden pillars, not saying a word. They, as small fries, didn't dare to meddle in their master's affairs. It wasn't good to respond, but it wasn't good to disagree either, so they might as well shut up. The stronghold on Seekong Planet has already been mostly destroyed. We can't continue like this. Go to other lower star domains to continue the experiment. Withdraw all the remaining forces on Seekong Planet. Withdraw the remaining forces on Seekong Planet? Did this mean they had to abandon Seekong Planet, this great experimental ground? But could their master make the decision on such a major matter by himself? The two black-clothed subordinates looked up at their master in shock. Their master's back was facing them. After throwing down this sentence, he strode out of the door. When he stepped out of the door, he suddenly chuckled and said, "Take that woman inside and evacuate by today. Do you understand?" "Yes. He decided to give up this useless experimental ground for the sake of better development in the future. Rather than wasting time with the local tyrants on Seekong Planet, it was better to develop experimental bases in other lower star domains. There were so many lower star domains that could allow them to develop experimental bases. There was no need to fight to the death with those tough bones on Seekong Planet. It wasn't worth it. And tiring. Hoarse cries rang out from the small, claustrophobic laboratory. He saw a person whose entire body had been scratched by zombies. Her hands and feet were tightly tied to a bed that was used for experiments. Several doctors were beside her, preparing a scalpel. How is it? A young man wearing a yaksha mask walked in with a sneer on his face. Hall Master Gong. The group of doctors hurriedly turned around and saluted the young man. It's about time. This woman was bitten and scratched by the zombie horde, but miraculously survived. If there are no accidents, she will be the first in our heavenly fate to evolve into a high-level corpse puppet. I can only give you half an incense stick's worth of time at most. We have to leave through the special passage immediately. Hall Master Gong paused for a moment before continuing. The sky above the Mo Kingdom capital is controlled by a strange shielding array. After we leave this time, I reckon that we won't be able to return through this shielding array for several years. That's why you must not leave anything behind. Take everything that should be taken away, especially those important research materials, Hall Master Gong reminded. Yes, Sir Hall Master. This subordinate will definitely handle this matter with utmost care. Roar. The female corpse on the bed suddenly opened her eyes and roared angrily. The area around her eyelids had been gnawed clean, and her pair of bulging eyeballs looked terrifying and frightening. She was roaring, but she already couldn't form a coherent sentence. This is a high-level corpse puppet? She hasn't completely evolved yet. She still needs some time. Under Hall Master Gong's intimidating gaze, the doctors broke out in a cold sweat. She has great potential. Perhaps she can even evolve into a humanoid special-grade corpse puppet in the future. Oh. Hall Master Gong's eyelids twitched. Ah. The female corpse let out a series of roars. Hall Master Gong's gaze ultimately settled on that utterly rotten face. Chapter 1555. After walking for an unknown period of time, Auber's vision blurred, and her body was involuntarily pulled down by a force. Screams and cheers mixed with all kinds of mocking laughter sounded in her ears, and the rumbling sound of drums greeted her. All kinds of excited voices instantly surrounded her. Auber flashed in the air, adjusted her posture slightly, and landed steadily on the ground. Looking carefully, she saw that there were two young men and a woman beside her, and their faces could no longer be seen. Because the three of them were in a very sorry state, their outer clothes were almost torn into strips, their expressions were very nervous, and the swords in their hands were trembling slightly. Seeing Auber appear, the woman's expression changed slightly, and then she shouted at her, "Little girl, quickly, quickly retreat. Retreat behind us." Auber was slightly startled. Looking around, she realized that the place where she fell was actually surrounded by people in a circular arena. The spectators in the surrounding rows seemed to be watching a feast, and they cheered thunderously. Some excited people in the front row even used the sticks in their hands to knock on the railings in front of them, and they screamed, "Quickly, quickly go! Quickly go! TSK, another little ant from the lower star field has come. My little cuties, quickly use your sharp claws and teeth to tear these ants that crawled out of the cesspool." Oh. Excited screams filled Auber's ears, causing her to frown instantly, and her heart was filled with displeasure. Noisy. Perhaps seeing that this newcomer was not scared silly by the scene in front of her, the man in the front row was slightly stunned, and then he stood up and laughed loudly. "A new round of betting has begun. Everyone, let's guess if these ants from the lower star region will be able to leave our thunderclap plains alive this time. Ha 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 ha." Everyone in the audience roared excitedly. Their eyes were burning with excitement, as if they didn't mind watching a good show. The two men and the woman looked at each other and took a deep breath. One of the men said, "Princess, if there's a chance later, take His Highness away first." "No. Ji Feng, if you dare to die, I will never forgive you." "Oh, oh, oh, oh." Loud shouts came from the outer ring, interrupting their conversation once again. "Ha ha, what a princess. Let me tell you, entering the territory of our Shuntian prefecture. You can stop calling me Her Highness from the lower star field. We only have the prefecture lord here. Only the mercenary king. Whoever is strong will be in charge." So, an arrow instantly pierced into the mouth of a man who was yelling loudly with the speed of a clap of thunder. It pierced through her throat and pinned her to the back of the chair. Everyone stared at the man who had been nailed to the back of the chair by an arrow with shock and disbelief in their eyes. Following that man's extremely shocked gaze until his death, he looked towards the opposite arena. A little girl in plain clothes put away the bow in her hand expressionlessly and glanced at them coldly. Noisy. The crowd was in an uproar. Chapter 1556. F***CK. An ant from the lower star domain actually dares to be so arrogant? An accident. This must be an accident. That punk must have been careless for that stoic-faced girl to seize the initiative and take his life. That's right. That must be it. None of Shuntian Prefecture's citizens dared to believe it. It was simply impossible for someone from the lower star domain who had just set foot in Shuntian Prefecture to have such great martial strength. Unless she was a lucky cat running into a dead mouse and was able to kill a member of the Leopard Mercenary Group in one strike. The Leopard Mercenary Group was a 3-star mercenary group in their Shuntian Prefecture, so its members had to be around 4-star spiritualists at the very least. Logically speaking, the true strength of these ants from the lower star domain was only around the cultivation of level 13 mystic cultivators. A little mystic cultivator could kill a spiritualist in one strike? Everyone didn't believe it. They only felt that their eyes were playing tricks on them, and that unlucky fellow from the Leopard Mercenary Group was nailed to death by an arrow. Heh, what a laughable weakling. He actually died at the hands of a little mystic cultivator from the lower star domain. If word got out, it would truly make people laugh their heads off. Auber noticed that apart from the boisterous thousands of spectators in the outer spectator stands, there were also several dozen mid-level winged zombies wandering around the large arena. Many corpses were hanging at the edge of the arena, and it looked like they had just been torn apart not long ago. Auber blinked and unhurriedly switched to a crow-repeating crossbow. He raised his arm horizontally and calmly pointed at one of the flying zombies. Ugly things should be shot from afar and not allowed to get close to one's body, so as to avoid dirtying one's clean clothes. A crow-gold arrow streaked across the sky at an extremely fast speed. This time, everyone clearly saw what it was. That was a high-grade mystic weapon, and it looked rather out of the ordinary. Although most of them had been in Shuntian Prefecture for many years, they might not even have a decent mystic weapon, let alone a spirit weapon. Seeing the little fellow take out a mystic weapon and shoot, some people were very envious. However, they were soon shocked by what they saw. However, the little girl didn't move much. Instead, she shot a few arrows at the flying corpse puppets around her. Following a few explosive sounds, the explosive arrows made a series of noises as they struck the corpse puppets. Soon, the first corpse puppet's head was torn apart, and it fell heavily to the ground. It was followed by a second and a third. Auber waved his hand, and the little white snake quickly slithered out, twisting its small body excitedly. Bite more people to death. Auber said expressionlessly, since they don't care about the lives of others, it means that they don't care about life and death. To them, life and death are nothing more than a joke. NN, little master, I'm going. The little white snake twisted its small body excitedly and instantly turned into a great void serpent. Its head was as tall as a mountain and its tail was very thick. It opened its mouth and bit the arms of several people, causing them to scream in fear. Black smoke rose from their arms. Under the control of the power of the netherworld, Some people who were controlled by the little white snake started to fight with other people. At this time, there was no more laughter or applause on the spectator stand. Instead, it was filled with panicked screams and angry roars. How could this be? The arena was in chaos. Chapter 1557. Why did that expressionless little girl from the lower star domain suddenly attack people? Many people in the back row couldn't even be bothered to watch the show. For their own safety, they hurriedly turned around and ran. What kind of joke was this? Previously, when they were toying with those people from the lower star domain, they watched them fight with the corpse puppets on the arena. That wasn't dangerous at all, which was why so many people bought tickets and came to watch. But it was different now. The targets of enslavement had changed to them. How could they continue to happily carry on? Moreover, there were thousands of spectators who bought tickets to watch the battle between humans and corpses. How boring was this? Arba's lips curled up slightly. She walked leisurely to a middle-aged man. He was the one who sat in the front row seat just now. He looked like the person in charge of this arena. At this moment, that man had already been beaten up by his companions. As the little white snake released its power of the netherworld, more and more people joined their side. This person in charge had been having a headache since the beginning. The battle between humans and corpses was supposed to be exciting, but the spectators were about to be beaten to death. Naturally, he was in a very bad mood. However, when Arba dragged him to her side and kicked his head, his mood became even more depressed and uncomfortable. Stop, Miss, I admit defeat. So what if he admitted defeat? Even if he admitted defeat, he would still be beaten. Arba didn't say another word. She stomped her little foot firmly on his face a few times. Tell me, how do you want to die? I can fulfill your wish no matter how you want to die. The middle-aged man trembled all over. This, miss, let's talk nicely. Arba didn't think there was anything to talk about with someone who harbored ill intentions towards her. If not for her great skill and courage, she would be the one being treated like a monkey for everyone to admire. These people deliberately circled the arena and attracted so many corpse puppets just to watch the people from the lower star domain put on a good show. If she was weak, she would be like those people in front of her, hanging on the railings in tatters and being bitten off by corpse puppets. How could such people be forgiven for harming the weak for their own pleasure? Don't kick. Don't kick my face, girl, don't kick. I can provide you with spirit coins. How much? Arba asked coldly. Spirit coins are probably the currency used in the 6 prefectures continent, probably made from spirit stones. Although she had a lot of spirit stones, she didn't have a single spirit coin. If she wanted to travel around the 6 prefectures in the future, spirit coins would naturally be indispensable. Since someone was so tactful and wanted to offer her spirit coins, she naturally wouldn't refuse. The middle-aged man seemed to have experienced the little stoic's terror, and he licked his lips and said with a smile, 2,000 spirit coins. To be able to provide it to your excellency, hee. Bang! Arba stomped down, and the 2 men and 1 woman beside him felt their faces hurt. The middle-aged man screamed and cried, Don't step on my little grandaunt. 20,000 for 2. I have 20,000 spirit coins here. I can give them all to you. Arba picked him up from the ground and slapped him without saying a word. Are you trying to dismiss a beggar? The 2 men and 1 woman, that middle-aged man really cried this time, grieving terribly. Chapter 1558. He suspected that he might not have looked at the almanac when he left the house today. Otherwise, how could he have run into such a malefic star? Arba pulled up the middle-aged man with a long face and said coldly and indifferently, Just now, I saw that you looked like you were in charge. Gambling isn't a day or 2, so you should have earned quite a bit. After her analysis, she increasingly felt that what she said was very reasonable. Thus, she nodded at herself and said coldly, Hand over everything in your inner world, or die. When the word die came out of her mouth, the middle-aged man felt that the girl in front of him wasn't joking. That cold and sharp gaze, coupled with that stoic expression, truly made one's heart tremble and exclaim in awe. Miss, I really don't have more than 30,000 spirit coins in total." That middle-aged man cried pitifully. "I swear, I absolutely won't deceive Mississippi." "You swear? What's the use of swearing?" On the side, the extremely disheveled princess couldn't help but scold. "Little girl, don't believe him. This person has no integrity to speak of. Those people all died in his hands. We absolutely can't let a tiger return to the mountain." "That's right. Otherwise, there will be no end of trouble in the future." Following the direction that Princess pointed, Arbor looked again at the dozen or so tattered bodies hanging on the railings. The princess couldn't suppress her grief and indignation. Perhaps they didn't expect that their party would encounter such a huge crisis on the first day they happily came to Shuntian Prefecture. Arbor turned her small head again, and her cold and lonely gaze landed on that middle-aged man. "Are you going to hand it over or not?" If he handed it over, it would save her some trouble. If he didn't hand it over, she would still have to search his inner world. How troublesome. One had to know that after consuming the Xuanji core in her body for such a long time, her cultivation and spiritual senses had improved slightly. Her cultivation had already officially entered the phenomenal success stage of level 14 Mystic Cultivator. Her spiritual senses had broken through to level 4. Her conscience couldn't be mentioned in the same breath as other people's. In terms of cultivation alone, her cultivation was naturally lower than this middle-aged man in front of her. However, in terms of spiritual sense, he was much stronger than the man in front of him. The consciousness of the man in front of her didn't even surpass the 10th level of the profound realm. If she wanted to take away this idiot's inner world, it would be a matter of minutes. However, based on the principle of not making a move if she could be lazy, she still hoped that the middle-aged man would obediently hand it over so that she wouldn't be bothered. However, after waiting for a long while, the middle-aged man took out a bag filled with 30,000 spirit coins from his inner world. Apart from that, there was nothing else. Arbor's eyes flashed with a sharp light. He kicked the man's calf. "You asked for it." After saying that, he moved his spiritual sense and suddenly attacked the opponent's consciousness pool. He directly opened his spiritual eye and scanned the thief's inner world. The corner of his mouth held a trace of coldness. The middle-aged man had a splitting headache as he held his head. He felt as if his conscience had been torn apart by someone, and everything was starting to go out of his control. No. Before the middle-aged man fainted, his eyes were about to pop out of their sockets when he saw the items in his inner world all fall to the ground with a pitter-patter sound. He wasn't the only one who was stupefied. The 2 men and 1 woman watching from the side also gaped as they looked at Arbor in disbelief. Catch up on yesterday. Chapter 1559. What was going on? Then, that huge pile of resources on the ground was it? Was it the middle-aged man's inner world? How was that possible? Could this little girl with a stoic face be a pervert? How could a normal person open another person's inner world? Not to mention forcefully opening another person's inner world to conduct a search. Arbor squatted on the ground expressionlessly as she looked at the huge pile of items in front of her. "Big liar," she said coldly. There were clearly 10 bags of spirit coins on the ground, with a total of about 300,000 spirit coins. That middle-aged man was only willing to give her 1 bag, and it was only 30,000 spirit coins. Where was his shame? He was crazy. He still wanted to cheat Jojo? Was Jojo so gullible? He had brought this upon himself. He had no one to blame but himself for seeking his own death. Miss Chow took the 300,000 spirit coins and picked through the pile of items again. She kept some useful materials and elixirs that caught her eye. Most of the items were useless trash in her eyes. The elixirs among them were at most high-grade, mid-grade blue vein elixirs. They were far inferior to the high-grade purple vein elixirs she had on hand. They weren't of much use to her, so Abba turned to look at the 2 men and 1 woman beside her. "You can take them all. Take it as compensation from this person," the little girl said to them seriously with a stoic face. The woman was stunned. She looked down at the huge pile of items on the ground and looked up at the little girl in a daze. Sure. The elixirs and mystic weapons on the ground were very valuable. But Miss Chow didn't care at all. The highest grade mystic weapon on the ground was only level 8. And the lowest grade mystic weapon that the giant ape had given her was level 12. How could she care about this junk? "I am Bai Xia from Siyuan Star. This is my younger brother, Bai Zhe. My fiancé is Ji Feng." The woman cupped her hands. "Little girl, there are too many things here. Why don't you take some more?" Abba shook his head. "Take it. Although it's all junk and not very useful, don't waste it." The 3 of them looked at each other. Bai Xia from Siyuan cupped her hands and said to Abba, "May I know where you are from?" Could it be that this lady wasn't from the lower star field? He had heard that the resources in every lower star field were similar. Why did he feel that the young lady in front of him was looking down on the treasures on the ground? To them, this was a very rich supply. Sikong Planet Abba. She nodded at the woman with an indifferent expression, then turned to look below the arena. At this time, the crowd on the viewing platform had already scattered like birds and beasts. Not a single person was left. Bai Xia from Siyuan Planet gazed at Chow Mu in a daze, continuously pondering over Chow Mu's earlier words. Sikong Planet. Sikong Planet seemed to be similar to Siyuan Planet. It was also one of the continents in the lower star domain. Why did the girl in front of him exude the aura of a nouveau riche? Hurry up and clean it up. Abba pointed to the ground and kicked at the railing at the edge of the arena. With one kick, she kicked down a half-dead zombie that was struggling to climb up. She then rubbed her embroidered green shoes on the ground in disgust. Disgusting. Dirty. Abba walked to the side in a huff. She took out a new pair of shoes from her inner world and put them on. Only then did her feet feel much better. Chapter 1560. When she turned around and returned to Bai Xia's side, the 3 people had already tidied up everything and stood up. Seeing her come over, the 3 people nodded at her gratefully. "Little miss, we're lucky to have you this time to resolve our urgent situation." Now that they thought about it, this little great aunt's methods were really very fierce. First, she shot through several zombies in one go to intimidate the audience, then she made an example of the audience. They didn't know what method she used, but she actually caused the audience to become chaotic and kill each other. The 3 people's gazes fell on the cute little white snake on the little miss's shoulder. Just now, they clearly saw this little white snake transform into a huge snake that blotted out the sky. It really couldn't be mentioned in the same breath as its current cute little appearance. Abba didn't say much and reached out to pick up the dying middle-aged man on the ground. This person's conscience had been severely injured, but he was only breathing a little more than a dead person. His gaze towards Abba was full of terror and terror. "You should have some connections to be able to set up a restriction at the lower star domain and the Shuntian Prefecture's passageway." Abba asked with a frown. "Speak, what's your relationship with the Shuntian Prefecture's prefecture lord?" Fresh blood oozed from the corners of the middle-aged man's mouth. It looked like he was already gasping for air and wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. Abba didn't really want to know who gave the middle-aged man so much power to set up a fighting ring here. In the entire Shuntian Prefecture, apart from the Prefecture Lord, the people with the greatest power were the Prefecture Lord's people. Someone who could think of such a sinister method to earn money from the entrance tickets was probably a vicious and ruthless person, and it couldn't be unrelated to the Shuntian Prefecture's Prefecture Lord. Thinking about it, that middle-aged man earned 300,000 spirit coins just from the entrance tickets alone. No wonder they had to continue operating this money-making business. It was said that the 6 prefectures' continent was several dozen times larger than Sikong Planet's continent, but it was different from Seekong Planet's continent in terms of luxuriance. In addition, the 6 prefectures were very far apart from each other. Moreover, there weren't many cities in each prefecture that people could rely on for survival, and the number of spiritual lands for cultivation could be counted on one's fingers. The population of Shuntian Prefecture was 100 times that of Seekong Planet, but the actual usable city area was about the same as Seekong Planet. Therefore, every city was basically filled to the brim. Especially the capital city of Shuntian Prefecture, that went without saying. The distance between the cities is very far. I heard from Senior that we have to reach the nearest city, Julu City, before nightfall. Otherwise, who knows what kind of danger we will encounter outside the city after dark. Senior? Yes, it's a message left by some seniors on Siyuan who have been to Shuntian Prefecture. Aber nodded. Normally, Julu City's entrance fee is 1 mid-grade spirit coin. At this point, Miss Bai Xia looked at Qiao Mu with a complicated gaze. The young lady had plundered a lot of middle-grade spirit coins from the middle-aged man and had become a veritable nouveau riche. She naturally did not care about a lousy spirit coin. Newcomers have just entered Shuntian Prefecture, so there's no need to be nervous if they don't have spirit coins. At the entrance of Julu City, 100 middle-grade mystic coins can be exchanged for 1 middle-grade spirit coin. It seemed like Bai Xia knew the market here better than her. As they spoke, they jumped off the arena and Bai Xia chatted with her. Who are those people hanging on the railings to you? We don't know them. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.